Valkyrie Elysium brings back the Valkyrie franchise from the gates of Valhalla after over a decade since its last release, changing up the formula to a Devil May Cry style hack and slash game now released for PS4, PS5, Xbox and now Steam as well. But how well has this adjustment fared for the once celebrated franchise? Is it a game that people who never got to experience Valkyrie Profile like me can use as a kickoff point to enjoy the franchise? Well, let's find out in today's Should You Play video. Hello there beautiful, how are you doing today? My name is Joesephyr, welcome back to my channel. Now before we get started, I do want to extend a massive thank you to Square Enix for gifting me a copy of the game so that I can share my thoughts with you all both on PlayStation and on Steam. And before we get started, I'd like to invite you to check out all of the social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. Over on Twitch I'll be streaming lots and lots of different things. I'm going to be doing some Pokemon stuff over the weekend, lots of Final Fantasy stuff, lots of Square Enix related stuff and fighting games too, so you're more than welcome to come and check me out over on there. On Patreon, I do a shout out for one of my patrons every time I release a brand new video, and today's shout out is going to be going to Multiracial Lion, who has Joker on their title card and is one of my ultimate tier patrons, and therefore this title card is hand drawn by me, so a massive thank you goes out to you for all of your support. And I know that Lion themselves is a pretty big fan of the Valkyrie Profile series, so it'll be interesting to see what they think of this particular video. So thank you very much, and if you're interested in getting all the benefits that come with being a patron, perhaps you'd like to consider having a look in the description box below. In Valkyrie Elysium you play as the titular Valkyrie, no, not Lenneth or Silmeria from the original Valkyrie Profile games, as you aim to help the All-Father Odin, who for some reason now looks like Father Balder from the Bayonetta franchise. You're helping him revive the world from the events of Ragnarok, but as time goes on, Valkyrie starts to learn from her fallen Einherjar warriors about human emotions and how that affects her role in the world. The main story is a little on the anemic side, with some standout moments belonging to another Valkyrie, named Hilda, who is assumedly based on one of the original Valkyrie Profile characters in Hrist, and then the Einherjar themselves actually have some intrigue behind them too. But it certainly dawned on me during my 10 hours plus of playtime that I cared a lot more about the gameplay than I did the story. Now I've also played this a little extra over on the Steam version as well as the PlayStation version. Most of the footage you see here is the PlayStation version, but I gave this game a good solid couple of hours of a go on the Steam Deck as well, and it ran fine on low settings, but anything above that and it did start to struggle a little bit. So if you're planning on getting it for a portable experience, something to bear in mind. Now visually this game isn't the greatest by today's standards, there's nothing explicitly wrong with it, and the art direction has a lot of really interesting qualities. Like when you look at the characters, they have these hard black lines over the silhouettes of each of them, and that's a really interesting direction, but the colour palette is a little bit on the drab side, apart from the magic particle effects and such, which certainly do stand out. And the characters being mostly expressionless for the most part makes the game look a little bit, I hate to say it, but dead behind the eyes. The music's pleasant enough, it certainly serves well as background to the sounds being played in the game, with dual tracks being played for each chapter, one that's designed for field exploration, another that's designed for combat. But I couldn't tell you a single piece that jumps out at me for memorability when it comes to Valkyrie Elysium, and that's always something I look for in these games. Now the core gameplay loop, the combat particularly, is a strong part of Valkyrie Elysium. It's strong in a lot of ways. The soul chain, which is a grappling hook of sorts that latches the Valkyrie onto any targeted enemy, makes things feel really animated and flow really well between enemy to enemy, as well as the aforementioned Einherjar and the magic systems blending together with a variety of weapons to make combat feel fast-paced and frantic, mostly in a good way. The spells themselves are also very visually appealing, and the variety of the weapons, the equipment that are enjoyable there to play around with, is pretty plentiful. Boss fights are a particular highlight, and they are plentiful, especially in the numerous side missions presented in Valkyrie Elysium, certainly providing a solid challenge amongst the waves of regular enemies and are extremely nice to look at. In fact, the monster design all around in Elysium is very strong, with a large variety not just amongst those bosses, but the regular enemies too, so the artists behind those designs absolutely deserve their flowers. But there are a few things with the combat that feel off, like end lag on some animations, like sometimes it takes a while to start up a new combo again, so there's a bit of committal that you wouldn't normally be used to in a fast-paced game like this. You're not able to change weapons mid-combo, but you are outside of combos between two weapons, which to me feels like industry standard nowadays thanks to the likes of Devil May Cry and Bayonetta. And then there's the camera. The camera is a nightmare. Like, it got trapped on things so frequently, like the walls. When you were using the soul chain, sometimes it would just go off in a random direction. If you were locked onto an enemy, it would lock on in weird ways. So often, in fact, that it was a genuine struggle to film enough footage without it happening at least once to present this video. Now, sadly, the exploration portion of Elysium is a little bit less interesting than the combat, largely being a linear affair with pretty arbitrary sections where you'd occasionally break off the beaten path to grab some items or collectibles, some of which you will need if you want to get the true ending of the game. Be sure to keep an eye out for verdant blossoms. And then you'll occasionally have these sections where you'll have to use one of your Einherjar to do something that allows you to continue to progress, but ultimately it all just takes you from point A to point B, where you get to fight a ton along the way. To be honest with you, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because honestly it reminds me of the late PS2, early PS3 era, where loads of these action RPGs came out and people were discovering what their favourites were amongst them. Standout for me, by the way, was Dororo Blood Will Tell. I discovered that in a random game store for like $5, and I ended up loving it. And there's a strong catharsis to playing games like this. You don't see games like this very often nowadays. So I definitely believe that this game has its audience. And if you're looking for something that kind of doesn't stray off the beaten path of that old school style of game, you might really love this. Speaking of kind of early noughties design decisions, could someone explain to me why Valkyrie feels the need to run around with her arms flapping behind her back like, you know, an early anime ninja? Does anyone actually think that that looks cool? So on that note, I think it's going to be a time to ask the big question: should you play Valkyrie Elysium? Now, I think Valkyrie Elysium presents a very different approach to the Valkyrie lineage, considering the fact that it seems to not really have anything in common with the original Valkyrie Profile games at all. So, if you're looking for Valkyrie Profile 3, you aren't going to find it here. It's definitely more like a spin-off than an actual sequel, though from the people that I've spoken to about the Valkyrie Profile franchise, and not being somebody that's played it myself, it's interesting to see that apparently the story in Valkyrie Elysium does have some parallels with the original Valkyrie Profile. So if that's something you want to explore, then by all means do so. The combat mechanics in Valkyrie Elysium are very strong. There's plenty of weapon variety and customization. The Einherjar themselves are intriguing characters that carry personal weight to a story that's otherwise a little bit anemic, and therefore for those of you who are looking to jump into like a noughties inspired era, like a noughties era inspired action RPG that doesn't stray too far from that well-trodden path, then Valkyrie Elysium might well be for you. But if you're looking for that AAA experience where everything is super polished and super clean, no, Valkyrie Elysium may not be the way to go. It definitely seems to suffer from technical issues with a camera that just won't quit, and then you could call it a stylistic choice. I would call it a visually drab color palette. And like I said, the story is a little bit bare bones, but the visual flair of the art direction is interesting. The way that the drab color palette of the environments contrasts with the strong visual elements of the combat itself is certainly something worth mentioning. So while I don't think that Valkyrie Elysium is going to be winning any Game of the Year awards anytime soon, I definitely think it's worth exploring for people who want to try something that harkens back to a different era. So that's going to be all for today's video. Once again, a massive thank you to Square Enix for providing me with codes for the game so that I can share it with you all. It's very, very kind of them, and they've always looked after me a great deal, and I hope that I can make them proud by covering more of their games in the future. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching the video. Don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications of any future videos I might be making. And then that's going to be all from me. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Valkyrie Elysium and whether you plan on buying it on Steam or on PlayStation or any of the other consoles that it's released on. Thank you ever so much for watching, beautiful, and I will see you next time. Take care.